Hey guys, welcome back to Paracord Planet. Today we're going to be tackling the Vortex Paracord Bracelet. This is by demenzcord. You can find him on Instagram. He was last year's winner of the 2020 Knot Games, and those are coming up again this year, but we'll talk more about that at the end of the video. For now, let's get into what you need to get started. The core of this bracelet is made with one strand of 550 cord, so you only need about 2 feet of that, and the rest of the weaving is going to be done with microcord. You'll need 7 strands that are each 5 feet long. I've got 3 different colors here, but you can do whatever color combo you want to do. To make this bracelet, you will need to keep your middle strand tight, and so to help us do that, we'll be using a jig. Let's dive right in. This bracelet looks really complicated to make, and it is a little bit more than some, but as long as you get the setup right and have that first weaving step down, we can repeat after that, and it's not too bad. So to get started, we'll take that middle cord, and on each end of it, we're just going to make a slip knot. And it doesn't really matter how long our overall bracelet is at this point. I just like to make that double overhand knot formed in a loop so we can hook it around one of the pegs of our jig. Tighten that down and do the same thing on the other end. Alright, there we go. Pretty simple. As long as the length between our 2 knots will fit around our wrist, we're good to go. We'll set that aside as we cut our microcord strands. So I'm going to be using 2 blue, 1 green, and 4 gray for our 7 cords. We want these to be, again, 5 feet apiece, so let's get cutting. Alright, once you've got all your cords cut, you can go ahead and lay them out underneath your bracelet setup, and we'll be tying them on one by one to our core. So we'll just take the first one. I'm going to do all the grays first, and we'll just tie it on with a simple overhand knot. We just want to make sure that on this side, the strand is coming out the bottom of the knot rather than on this side. That'll make our knots nest nicely together once we get going a little bit further. So tighten that one down. We'll probably have to come back and tighten that one again before we move on to the next step. So on that second knot, same thing again. Just make sure that left cord is coming out the bottom of the knot. We'll finish all these up in the same way. There we go. Again, just make sure that each side of each cord is the same length. For the color scheme, we're kind of borrowing from Weavers of Eternity's version of this tutorial. We really liked how he had a bright spiral going around it, so we changed ours to green. Once you have all those tightened down and the length's the same, then we can move on to our next step. One more thing that we'll do before we get into our weave is I'm just going to stagger our knots a little bit around a spiral. So the bottom ones are going to the left. They're going to end up that way anyway, and doing that ahead of time is just going to allow us to get our knots tight right off the bat. So now, to begin our weave, we want to first deal with these top 2 cords. One coming out to each side. On this left side, it's going to be coming over the other ones. And on the right side, it's going to be coming underneath. And then, you know the next knot, we're just going to be doing the first half of a cobra knot, like that. So that's left cord over the top, right cord over that cord, but then down around the back and up through this loop. And we're only going to be doing that knot. We're not going to be doing the inverse of it this time, like you would on a cobra. So we'll tighten that down, bring all of our knots pretty close together there, and then make one more of them. Again, using that left cord first over the top, down around and through, and tighten that down. And we're naturally going to be spinning around the core this way. So once that one's tightened down nicely, go ahead and put this cord out of the way to the top, and leave this cord out to the side, out of the way. Taking the next one, again with this cord out of the top, over, but we'll be coming over the top of all the ones that are left. And this cord is going to come underneath all the ones that we have not tied yet, but over the top of that one that we already did. That's the most important thing to keep track of as we start spinning around our cord it's going to become a little bit difficult to keep track of which ones are tied and which ones aren't. So just be mindful of that. So then our next two chords, exactly the same step as before. We'll be repeating this a lot before we get to the end. That left chord over the top. Tighten that down and do one more. So before we go any further, we're going to give you a close-up of the weave, just so that you can tell how our different chords nest against each other. So right there, you can see on the left side of our weave, each time we repeat the pattern, the chord's going to go underneath the one previous. And on the other side, it's going to go on the top of each one previous. So our lines that are running parallel to the core of the bracelet, they're going to be nesting right alongside of each other. We don't want those two chords to cross. So now that we've done two of our gray chords, let's finish up with our two more gray, the two blue and the green, and then we'll show you what it looks like after that. So here's what it looks like after the first iteration of that repeating pattern. You can see that it is spinning around the core to the point where those bottom blue knots are sideways. So if we twist it this way, you'll see what it looks like. So if you want to at this point, you can take it off of your jig, flip it over, flip it to a better side to work from. Otherwise, just keep in mind that you want these to nest against each other, and you don't want to force those knots to be flat. We'll keep on moving on. On this next one, it's the same as before. Again, on this right side, we're going to be coming over the top of all the rest of the chords. And on the left side, we'll be coming underneath. This will be tied sideways, nested right by that blue one. You won't really be able to tell when the pattern repeats after this, because our two sets of chords are just going to be on the opposite sides of our core, spinning around in a spiral. So we'll go ahead and speed through that and catch you at the end. Oh, and it's always a good idea to tighten down every knot before moving on to repeating your pattern, as your knots can kind of loosen up while you're tying the ones right below them. Once your braided length is just a little bit shorter than your wrist measurement, we can go ahead and stop. We want to leave a little bit of room for our adjustable closure. So now with all 14 of our ends, we can go ahead and clip those and melt them down. Just be careful because you don't want your knots to come undone when you clip them really close to the knot. So I'm going to take it off of the jig first. And we can actually just undo the knots on our ends by pulling that loop out. Set our jig aside and take care of all that extra cord. Now we've got the total length of our bracelet. That fits almost all the way around our wrist. We can take one of our scraps that we cut off from the end, just about a foot should be plenty here, and we'll make that end closure just using the cobra knot again. So we'll line up our ends and cross them over and bind those together with a little bit of a cobra weave. Just put the middle behind the back and start weaving. Once you get that first knot, it should stay in place. Once you've woven about an inch, you can go ahead and clip the ends there too. Make sure that you secure your ends well on this one, as it's going to be taking some tension when you pull the cords through to adjust your bracelet. Once that's done, just adjust your bracelet to the widest it needs to be to fit over your wrist. And then you can clip your ends pretty short to that. I'm going to add just an overhand knot. But you can just clip them. You could add a little bit of cobra weave around the single strand, however you want to finish that off to make it look nice. So there's our finished Vortex bracelet. I really like how this turned out with the bright single color spiraling around. As I said at the beginning of this video, this was actually last year's winner to the Not Games. That's happening again in March. It's a contest put on by Matthias Kruger of Kruger EDC. So we'll put some links down in the description for that if you're interested in learning more. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one and will try it for yourselves. I'll put a link in the description to where you can find the microcord that we used in this project. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.